All right. We'd like to say welcome to our podcast for today. It is Saturday. As we all know, we are always here on Saturday to bring you the podcast. And our podcast is all about contemporary issues that affect the Christian life of faith. And we intend to promote and preserve the Christian heritage of our country, Liberia. And today, our podcast will focus on Liberia's peril of corrupt hearts. Now, there's a whole lot we have to talk about here, along with our guest today and also our co host of this program, Reverend Suarez Dede. So please share this link with your friends and your relatives and those who you love. Okay, share this link with them because there's a whole lot we'll cover today. As we all know, scripturally in the book of Ezekiel, chapter 28, starting with verse 17, it says, "Your heart was filled with pride because of all your beauty. Your wisdom was corrupted by your love of splendor. So I threw you to the ground and exposed you to the curious gaze of kings. You defile your sanctuaries with your many sins and your dishonest trade." Now, is Prophet Ezekiel is talking about why sin here. Someone is being corrupted in the human heart. The human heart is prideful and it is desperately wicked. And who can know it? Only God. And this brings on the situation in our homeland today. As we all know, Liberia is embarrassed by its international image of corrupt practices. And the U.S. Department of Treasury issued a specialized sanction enshrined in the 2017 Global Magnitsky Act against three government officials: Nathaniel McGill, Presidential Affairs Minister; Bill Tweway, Managing Director of the National Port Authority; and Serena Cephas, Justice Ministry Solicitor General. Now, the Liberian President George Weah has suspended these three officials and designated the principal deputies of the suspended officials to take charge. Nevertheless, endemic government corruption has a history from previous governments that caused violent regime change, bloodletting, and the combination of the civil war, destruction of human lives and properties. Now, Liberia's peril of corrupt hearts is a serious national threat to the spiritual growth of unison and tangible progress in virtually every sector of the country when leaders are unwilling to render their hearts to God to lead with wisdom. The latest uproar over corrupt government officials is nothing new. With the lack of godly wisdom, the virtue of integrity is missing. Absolute truth is missing as well. Corruption and defilement are sure to prevail where God is not honored and selfish ends inspire men and women's conduct. Hearts are consumed with injustice, and the few choke up the economy through greed, pride, and outright lies. Now, the outburst of anger over pervasive corruption has always been the mantra to call for regime change. Now, this too is vanity in a sense, given that history shows no genuine change has occurred, even under new leadership. What lies ahead of us is anyone's hope. May our Lord God's omniscience and sovereignty prevail in all of this. However, there is an enigma about why widespread corruption persists despite efforts by the international partners, particularly the US, to curtail corruption through preventive funding programs. Now, the ambassador McCarthy says corruption undermines developmental plans for Liberia to grow into a vibrant society for all. He enumerates the U.S. administration's efforts to prevent corruption and uphold democratic values and principles of transparency and accountability. Now, there was a recent video on this, which of course I will be glad to share here for you, and so that you can have an idea of what we are talking about. Though some of you have watched it, but it is very, very important that we share this because the Biden administration on June the 3rd, 2001, launched a program called the Anti-Corruption Scheme or Program that, of course, will serve as a bulwark against corrupt practices and any other thing that might corrode democracy or democratic values. And so this program has been initiated, and Liberia has benefited immensely. And I'm going to bring on here just a short clip here from the ambassador's press conference where he announced the sanction of these three government officials in Liberia. And also, he kind of enumerates what the U.S. has been doing to fight corruption in the inner workings of the Liberian government. So let me bring that here on the screen to have that play here so that we all can see what the U.S. has been doing to combat corruption as a whole. Take a listen.
Today's actions are one of a series of actions taken to combat corruption, in line with the U.S. strategy on countering corruption. In addition, today's announcement is consistent with the U.S. strategy towards sub-Saharan Africa, which was announced by Secretary Blinken during his recent visit to South Africa. In that strategy, two of the four main objectives touch on the effort to reduce corruption. First, our goal to foster openness and open societies, which includes promoting government transparency and accountability. And second, to deliver democratic and security dividends, which includes backing civil society, empowering marginalized groups, and defending free and fair elections. Corruption undermines these and other goals. The United States stands with all Liberians against corruption, and I want to highlight some of our efforts in this endeavor. Since 2005, the State Department has committed more than $150 million to promote good governance and accountability in Liberia through our support of civilian security and justice sector programs. This funding enabled the Liberian National Police to develop a complaints and commendations system for the public to report good and bad policing, and provided anti-corruption signage for courtrooms throughout Liberia. In July, the U.S. Embassy sponsored 10 Liberian judges and prosecutors to attend high-level anti-corruption training at our West Africa Regional Training Center in Accra, Ghana. From 2015 through 2020, through the Legal Professional Development and Anti-Corruption Program, USAID provided support to the Liberia Anti-Corruption Commission that helped build the capacity to strengthen the professionalism of LACC investigators and prevention officers. Through the Revenue Generation for Governance and Growth activity, USAID supported the introduction of e-filing and a mobile payment platform at the Liberia Revenue Authority. So by minimizing contact between the tax officials and taxpayers, by minimizing contact, these initiatives reduced corruption risks and increased domestic resources. Our embassy and USAID provide training to Liberian journalists and media organizations to disseminate accurate information, promote government accountability, and conduct in-depth reporting that can shine a light on corruption. And USAID is working with Liberian civil society organizations to advocate for reforms that enhance transparency and accountability. So these activities, or these examples, are just a short list of the many things we're undertaking in Liberia to counter corruption. However,
okay, so that is the U.S. ambassador there speaking about how the U.S. has been spending millions and millions of dollars to teach or to help judges understand democratic values and to combat corruption. They have trained journalists. They have also spent money for transparency with the National Revenue Agency. They develop a system where funds will come in with transparency and accountability. But some officials still do some things that undermine the entire process. So we just want you to get a glimpse of what the U.S. Ambassador McCarthy has been saying regarding the U.S. effort to combat corruption. But it's according to him, it is left with Liberians to do so as well. And so this, of course, bring in the question of how we can stand up to fight corruption individually or within a group setting or with a movement. How can we promote accountability and transparency? And I'm so glad that we have some special guests here today. But before we introduce our guests, let's bring on the co-host of this program, Reverend Suarez Dede. Reverend Dede, we are on here, back here, about Liberia's peril of corrupt hearts, all about the danger, peril mean danger, okay, of how we see our country growing. There's a threat that we see here to undermine growth.
Certainly, again, this is the day that the Lord has made. We will rejoice no matter what and be glad in it. Of course, I'm glad to be back today, and we are happy to have our guest here who you were announced as the host and co-host, Ambassador Bounce. But we bless God for this day. I'm glad you played the clip from the ambassador's press conference with, I would say, to journalists in Liberia recently when he announced the U.S. government's decision to sanction the three government officials you mentioned. But again, you link this to spiritual growth. When the spirit is not in tight, Alex, things like this will happen because you don't fear anything. There's no connectivity with the Holy Spirit or with the Spirit of God. So you go ahead and do anything you want to do. I was looking at 2 Peter 2:19, and it reminds me of something. It says, they promised them freedom, but they themselves are slaves to corruption. They themselves are slaves to corruption. For whatever overcomes a person, to that he is enslaved. Mm-hmm. Whatever overcomes a person, to that thing, that person is enslaved. So as we see, corruption is so endemic now, not just amongst our people, but from the hierarchy of the government. And when that happens, the people would think corruption should just go ahead unimpeded. But that is the wrong thing to do. So I'm happy that we're going to be discussing this topic today. It cuts across not just Liberia, but in sub-Saharan Africa, corruption is eating into the very fabric of our society. It's destroying the society. So I pray that we don't have all the answers like we say, but we are glad to discuss as far as we can go. And let God help us, Alex. We are in a place where we need God's direction and help.
Yes, we do. And we are so glad to bring on our special guest today, Ambassador Nathaniel Milton Barnes, former ambassador to the United States on behalf of the Republic of Liberia. And he also served in past government as the Minister of Finance. He's also an author. He just authored this book recently with his wife, Dawn Barnes, and it's called Believer's Journey. A very good devotional book. I haven't read through it yet. I started on a few pages, but it is good. It's on Amazon. You can also get it and send your review to see how it is for your spiritual growth as well. Without much ado, we are so glad to have Ambassador Barnes here, who also just wrote an article in the Analyst newspaper regarding the current situation that we are talking about. And for him, he wants for the people to now take the lead. So he will now come on to talk more about his article and his perspective on some of the political implications, social, economical implications when it comes to pervasive corruption in our governmental system. And we are so glad now to bring on Ambassador Barnes. Welcome.
Thank you so very much. I'm happy to be here. Good to see both of you.
Yes, we are so glad to see you. Now, your recent article in the Analyst newspaper, you are calling on the Liberian people to take lead or charge, and you decry the pervasive practice of corruption, which is, of course, is nothing new in our country. And so you make some emphasis about how people are sick and tired now. Now, when you call on Liberians to take the lead, what do you mean?
Well, the destiny of Liberia, regardless of how we see it, is in the hands of Liberians. I mean, history has proven to us that whenever we step aside and let others try to control which way we will go, it has not been successful. And that's a truism across the globe. Okay. So we have a very good opportunity at this point in time to do something about this. But there are a couple of issues I want to bring up front to more or less justify my particular argument. We need to ask ourselves the question, number one, why is America doing this? Why is America taking this step in Liberia to fight corruption? Is it because America and Liberia have long historical ties? Is it because Americans like Liberians? Or is it because Liberians depend on America? Well, that's arguable. All of those things are arguable. In my own experience, you must understand that diplomacy and international relations is driven by one thing and one thing alone, one primary factor, and that's the factor of national interests. Okay, now every country on this globe has a different set of interests, or is driven. It's a diplomatic and foreign policy interactions is driven by different goals. In the case of the United States of America, America's primary interest is its security and the security of its citizens. And the underlying rationale behind that is if we are able to create stability across the globe, our security is guaranteed, because there's a better chance of us being secure when we create stability across the globe. So yes. America's involvement in Liberia, and don't get me wrong, we are all grateful for it. Okay, after all these years, hundreds of millions, billions of dollars of investment in Liberia, it's a wonderful thing. But let's not forget that the primary driver behind those gestures is American interests.
Yeah.
So that is not many of us may realize that, but that's the primary driver behind why America is doing this. We appreciate it. But most importantly, as it happens, that particular interest that the United States has in terms of creating stability in Liberia dovetails very nice with our own interests. Now, what are our interests? What it is that drives our international and diplomatic interactions and relations? It is development, human development of our people. So we have infrastructure, we have good healthcare delivery systems, we have good education, we have security, we have freedom, okay, and fairness and equity. So it dovetails very nicely, okay. So now that the U.S. has historically intervened in Liberia, we know that, okay, for our benefits, okay. It is important now that we take the initiatives that they have started and run with it. We Liberians must get on the front line of fighting corruption. There are two problems with that. Whenever we Liberians historically have encountered a problem, the tendency is to immediately look around and see who we can blame for the problem. Well, they did it in the past. That happened in the past. This group is responsible. These people are doing it. Why can't we do it? Or I'm doing it, but it's for the benefit of the country. They usually take it outside the country. We always look to blame someone. Okay, we need to change the paradigm to this perspective. The problem is not the problem. Finding a solution to the problem is the problem. Okay, we understand that our country is rife with corruption. Our entire system, I have said in the past that corruption is not only institutional, it's not only systemic, it's psychological. We in our own existence believe that in order to get ahead, you must cheat. From the kid that's selling cold water on the street, and roasted almond cold water on the street, trying to hijack, okay, or hustle his customers by giving them fewer almonds or less change, okay. It's psychological. So as a result of that, we need to grapple the problem at it to say, yeah, we know what has happened in the past. We know how we are impacted. How can we identify solutions to this problem? And the only way to identify a solution in the instance of corruption in Liberia is for the everyday folks to realize something very, very important. They have power. They have power. God has created all of us and given us the power of thought, the power to think and act in a way that's in our best interest and in the best interest of our families and those around us, our compatriots. We must use that power positively to change this particular paradigm that we have. Okay? We cannot look to America. Now that America has started this ball for us, this game for us, hey, we need to get in the forefront and begin to demand that our leaders do the right thing by our people, do the appropriate thing. We should not just suspend these people. Now that it's been proven, and the one thing I have to credit the US government about, they never take an action unless they have indisputable proof. Okay? Now that we have that, don't just suspend them, fire them. Lay an example. And anybody else that is identified with this, because at the end of the day, this is our absolute number one issue that hinders our growth and our progress. I know I've been sort of long-winded, but I had to establish the groundwork for this. If we do not kill corruption, and if we do not take the forefront, we shouldn't rely on anyone else to do it for us. We are not going to go anywhere. Liberia is presently on an abyss. And if we don't pull it away from that abyss, we will fall in and become stateless. And we cannot afford to let that happen.
Yes. What about those who argue that, well, corruption is endemic, it's been in the system for a long time, even though corruption will always exist. And Ambassador McCarthy, said also in our video that corruption exists everywhere, even in the US. But I believe there's a degree of corruption. I mean, if all the basic necessities of the population are met, I believe people still, the human heart is sinful and people engage in corruption. But if we look at the degree of corruption, we term Liberia's corrupt activity or practices as rampant or pervasive.
Absolutely.
Now, can you talk more about that?
Yeah, you see, he's right. The nature of people, there's this little devil inside of us that make you want to cheat to get ahead.
Yes.
Okay? But it has become the predominant way of our existence. It has become the predominant way of our existence. If people cheat, if our leadership cheat, and if we begin to think psychologically that cheating and stealing and corruption is okay, we are doomed. So we need to look at it from that perspective. Yes, it's pervasive. It will never go away permanently. Okay? Like, look, the honest thing about it, given our humanity, poverty will never be alleviated. Let's not kid ourselves. It can be reduced. It can be significantly reduced. But to say we will create a world where there is zero poverty, not realistic. To create a system where there is zero corruption, not realistic. But at the state where we are now in our national existence, it's the predominant thing that's happening. Corruption is impacting, it's predominant in our livelihood, and it's impacting everybody. We are less healthy because of corruption. We are less literate and less educated because of corruption. We don't have good roads because of just about every malady that we have right now can be traced back to corruption. So the thing we need to do is to focus on today and the future. We need to take the past, learn from the past, okay, and stop looking back and saying, well, we've always had it, so it will be okay. No, it is not okay. We must work on significantly reducing it. And the way to do it is, again, demand that of your leaders. And I always say to the Liberian people, you have power. You have power to change your situation, change your personal life, change your national life by demanding certain things, certain behaviors from those that lead us.
Reverend Dede?
Well, to discuss your solution to the problem, I want to go back to your statement in the analyst when you said at every level of the Liberian society we must eradicate corruption, and you went down the list. My question is, can we really eradicate corruption, Ambassador Barnes?
Yes, we can. Like I said, it cannot be 100% eradicated. It can be significantly reduced. And like I said, it's so pervasive that corruption is our way of life. It predominates our society, how we think, how we produce. And the way to do that, the one thing that's wonderful in Liberia, we have great laws. We have legal scholars that have sat down and created wonderful laws. The challenge we have in Liberia is, how do we implement it effectively? Okay, if I were to go to Liberia today and cheat, okay, and then some leader said he needs to go to jail, people begin to feel sorry for me. So today I saw a video, I saw a video sent to me from Banga, where there were groups of Liberians rallying behind Minister McGill and identifying with him and saying he's okay. That sort of behavior should not be acceptable. When a person does a wrong, no matter who they are, they need to pay the consequences. Our law says if you do this, you will pay these consequences. He should be subjected to our laws. No one in Liberia is above the laws. So it has to be that way. I'm so sorry. Okay, go ahead.
Yes,
I have a special needs child, so I'm sorry.
Okay. And if you are just joining us, this is the Gracious Hope live stream podcast. My name is Alexander Red, along with Reverend Swat Dedet, the co-host of this program, Ambassador Barnes, talking about the recent development of the sanction issued by the U.S. Department of Treasury on 3 government officials. And we are talking about solutions of how we can not totally eradicate, but reduce corruption in our country. But it goes back to the human heart. If the heart is not right with God or in sync with the Lord, then integrity becomes an issue. We know this is not about perfection. This is about integrity. And God expects us to live a life of integrity in our leadership, as well as in all that we do to bring glory to Christ. Now, the second half of the program will be also featuring Reverend Oliver Lloyd of the All Saints of the World Mission Church in Silver Springs, Maryland. He will be coming on as well to give his perspective as well. So if you're just joining us, please share this link with anyone, your friends, and so that they can be a part of this program. Now, Ambassador Barnes, just before we part here, because we said we're going to take 20 minutes or 30 minutes of your time, you are planning to go back to Liberia. You also aspire to run for the nation's highest office. Now, looking at all of what is going on, looking at the opposition parties, in disarray, total disarray, not agreeing on many things. What do you see so far as the gateway to bring hope to the Liberian people with all that is going on right now in our country?
The biggest challenge we have in Liberia is trying to change mindsets, trying to make people realize that when something is wrong, it's wrong, or you have the ability to change it. And unfortunately, the way the paradigm is constructed right now is selecting our leaders, the standards or the prerequisites that we establish to say, yes, I'm going to vote for that person, or I'm going to vote for that person. I'm not going to vote for that person. Unfortunately, with the majority of our voters, is not based upon the standard of experience, expertise, intellect, integrity, honesty, God-fearing, courage, all those wonderful qualities that leadership must have. It's based on how popular this person is, regardless of all those other things, and how much money they can collect or they can get from that particular individual. So therein lies the challenge. And it's a risk a politician like myself take when I want to take the high road and say, I'm going to try to convince people that they need to think about their future. They need to think about the issue of experience and expertise and integrity and courage and humility, okay, and God-fearing. They need to think about those things when they are making those decisions, as opposed to how much rice can I get for today, or how much money can this person give me, or how popular this person is. Therein lies the challenge. So our particular strategy is begin to engage people at the most rudimentary level of our society and say, listen, you have power. You can control your future and your destiny of this country if you make good decisions now. Our past have shown us that we made poor decisions many, many times, okay? But we have this wonderful quality called resilience. We are able to bounce back, okay, and look forward to moving ahead. So my basic approach is to just begin to engage the people, okay? And the way I look at it, I don't see myself as a politician. I see myself as a leader. We need leaders in Liberia and not politicians. So that's my fundamental approach. And the truth of the matter is, I am prepared to engage anyone who has the same mindset as myself, the same values, the same principles, the same vision. Okay, one does not have to be a president to lead. One doesn't. Okay, but is it going to be easy to change Liberia? Is it going to be easy to reduce corruption to the maximum? No, it's not. Anyone that show me a person that tells you that, I'll show you a liar. It will take courage, focus, okay, and Liberian people demanding the best for themselves and their family and their future. So right now, the whole thing about where Liberia is going is not depending on a Nathaniel Barnes or an Alex Red or Suadede or George Weah or Alec Cummings or Joseph Boakai for that matter. It depends on the desire of the people. And hopefully we are getting to a point, especially among the young people, where their eyes are beginning to open and say, now I know I have power. I'm not going to let anybody take my power away from me. I'm not going to abuse this power. I'm going to use it for my own betterment and the betterment of my family and our future generations. So it's going to be a challenge, but I'm looking forward to the challenge. You know, I feel that this is something that I have to do. I've got no choice in the matter. I've just got to do it, and I intend to do it.
So, Ambassador, before you leave, we're already done with that. But just as Ellie's getting ready to go to our next guest, Bishop Warner said the problem with Liberians is Liberian. Do you agree with that?
I beg your pardon, what?
The problem with Liberians is Liberian themselves. They encourage the leaders to be corrupt.
You know, I had a very, very good friend and mentor who said something like that to me once. And he said, people get the leaders they deserve. He said, Nat, people get the leaders they deserve. It's like saying that Liberians they're their own worst enemies. Okay. While that's debatable, I personally believe in my heart of hearts, there is something, a quality about Liberia, about Liberian that is good, that desires to be successful. We just need to tap the right button that will make that spirit spring out of the Liberians. Yeah, it's going to be difficult. Okay. Are we our own worst enemies? Debatable. We could be, but we darn well better very soon begin our own best friends.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador.
Thank you. Thank you all so much for giving me this opportunity. We pray for Liberia. We hope for the best for Liberia.
That is Ambassador Nathaniel Milton Barnes, former U.S. Liberia ambassador, and also former finance minister. He's an author, and this is his new book along with his wife, Dawn, and you can find this on Amazon. This is my copy of God. It's called Believer's Journey, and it is a devotional here to help us grow spiritually. And he is running to for the nation's highest office, and I understand he's going to be traveling to Liberia pretty soon. Hopefully, we wish him the best of the best and God's grace upon him and his family. And so, Ambassador Barnes, thank you so much for coming on our podcast or for responding to our invitation. And he
Thank you
has,
very much.
you're welcome. He has an article in the Analyst newspaper. You can get online and read our article. And he enumerates a whole lot about all that is going in our country and some of his perspective regarding how we can find solutions to our current country, that is our country's image as well as its international linkage. All
Together
right.
we can fix it.
And together
Together,
as a people,
together we can fix it.
who can fix it. Thank you.
God
Thank you
bless.
for coming. All right. And of course, this second half of our program, we'll have our special guest here, Reverend Oliver Lord. And of course, he is with the All Saints World Mission Church, growing together in the Silver Spring, Maryland area. And he will be giving his perspective here regarding the current situation or uproar over corrupt practices of some government officials and the health of our country from a biblical lens, and what are the political, social, and cultural implications as well. And so we'll be right back. Make your voice heard. Okay. You can opine, send your comments in. Okay. And we'll be glad to hear from you as well. You can also find us in the App Store. Okay, go to the App Store and get our app on your phone, and you will have easy and quick access to all of our biblical materials, teaching, podcast, devotional, both reading and audio, video, and the rest. You will find all of that there. This is the podcast here every Saturday. And of course, this is the media outlet of Gracious Hope Bible Fellowship every Saturday. And we'll talk about issues that are concerning for all Christians to be aware of, and also to learn how to depend on the Lord more and speak out when it comes to the truth. And so we'll be right back. Please don't go away. All right. And our special guest here for this second half or segment for our program is Reverend Lord. And we'd like to say welcome, Reverend Lord, to our podcast.
Thank you so much for the invitation, and I'm happy to be back.
All right, all right. Now I know is you are it is nothing new to you about the current U.S. Treasury Department sanction on the three official of government who are engaged in corrupt practices, and you have been around. You have initiated some efforts. That is some programs in our country looking at the common people, helping them, and from time to time, our country is not growing in the way that we can measure when it comes to other African countries in developing roads, water, and electricity, and all the common, let's say, the basic necessities that we need. We import from other countries, for example, rice and other commodities. And here is our country, and we are looking for leadership. We would like to take a biblical lens from you. What is your take so far, Reverend Lord?
And I'm sure you are in reference of recent in Liberia, specifically regarding U.S. sanctions on official government in the Republic of Liberia. Sad to say, one of which works right across the office of the President of the Republic. Corruption is an age-old problem. It's the problem of sin, and I'll put it straight that way. It's a problem of sin, and it's one of humanity' biggest problem. Darwin, in his theory, Darwin's theory implies that one of the first law of nature is the survival of the fittest. What Darwin was saying from a scientific perspective, and even an anthropological perspective, that humanity was created in a way that we are constructed with this mechanism to strive for our individual survival. And without spiritual transformation, it is so difficult to find mankind with the kind of discipline that is required um, to seek the welfare of others. However, if we look at how God truly made us, God's intention and the way He constructed us in His image, and speaking from a biblical perspective in Genesis, He created us in His image and in His likeness. Now, John, First John, God is love. Is love. Love is our ability to meet the needs of others. Jesus said, "Greater love has no man than to lay down his life for his friend." Which means that when God created us, our nature, our divine and nature, was to have the capacity to put others in our place and to meet the need of others. However, with the introduction of sin, our ability to put others in our position, to see others in the way we want to be seen, um, was distorted and destroyed by sin. However, it does not mean that we do not still have the capacity to do so. God had made us and has helped our society um, eh, to advance in a way where we are able to need of one another, to still have social and civic responsibility, civically responsible and socially responsible, even without the faith that we share as Christians. Our world has evolved in such a way that it is possible that Liberia and any other nation or any other society can rise up to the call of dignity, respect for others. If I would start with that way.
That's great. That's great. I mean, that was a great expose by the Reverend. I mean, looking at the different thing, and that brings me to this scripture, and I was reflecting on it today. It said, "Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed," based on what
Mhm.
Reverend Lord's representation was just now. But be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that by
Mhm.
testing, because all of this corruption thing is by testing you. You are tested by the money you come in contact with, by the prestige and being famous. That so by testing you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. This is where our leaders are today. And Revelations 2 also says, "I know your works." So God knows what's going on. God sees our mind. But the failure to resist the testing of Reverend Law and Ellis is where our leaders are today. Because there are leaders who are being in power who went through the office uncorrupt or
Mhm.
uncorrupted. They stood the test of time. They were tempted by the chances they had to steal. They refused to do that, and it came out of his claim. I don't want to start calling names now, but we can call one or two names. But there are those who cannot resist that temptation, and it steps so deep into it to the extent where they destroy themselves, their posterity, and
Mhm.
people will judge them years and 10 years or time from now. So this is a serious situation. Dr. Not Dr. Bounds, Ambassador Bounds talk about corruption being eradicated, but it can happen, but it can be reduced. So, Reverend Lloyd, I want to pose this question to you too. Maybe you can comment on that. In the face of the problem of corruption we have, do we say that? I asked a question to Ambassador Bounds too, and I want to for you to have your take on this. Should we say that our people are encouraging our leaders to be corrupt? Can we say that?
Let me say this, and I think, and that's the bond allude on that it's a social problem, but deeper than that, it has become a cultural problem in our society. We have accepted favoritism form, and let me speak of Liberia and countries where our authority can do whatever they desire. And it's so ingrained in our culture till people will come from Africa, go to other parts of the world, and they will accept anything, any kind of leadership, and people in authority will do things that are on nothing, because it seems to be a cultural thing that our leaders cannot be challenged. And this goes back so many years. Um, Shift very quickly to the transformation of the mind that's out. I can, last time I was on your show, and I talk about, and most of our presidents in latter time, President Weir is of as higher is accountability, especially from the church, because this guy claimed to be a minister of the gospel. This man built a church in Liberia. He went to Israel he prayed before he became president of Liberia. And don't tell me that the boss, his office, he is so blind that he's not aware of the level of corruption that is taking place within his government, right across his office, right within the same building with which he works every single day of the week. Someone he's interacting with daily. Don't tell me that it's impossible, that he's so blind that he's not able to, he has not been able to see what's going on within his circle. That the United States of America has to sanction this fellow before he sees the light. It's discouraging, and it comes back to what you say, Reverend Denon, that it requires a transformation of the mind, a transformation of the mind. Be ye transformed by the renewal of your mind. To renewal, he's basically saying that there is an old way that has to be put away, and there's a new way that needs to be adopted. The new way that needs to be adopted in Liberia is that commitment to your country, to your people. You drive every day, and people are on the wayside, suffering, barely have something to eat. 5, 6-year-old children. I mean, you see 10 and 13-year-old children on the side of the street with maybe 10, 15 bags of water, hoping that it can get those sales just so they go back and get a cup of rice for the family. It is evil. It's evil what we see in our country. You know,
It is.
Yes, just to conclude on that, definitely, Pastor Dede, we need that renewal of mind from a spiritual perspective.
Yes. That renewal of mind is all we need. We need that, and Christ can provide that, because Christ is the sacrificial lamb that God has provided for all those who believe in him. And John 3:16, God's heart is open with love. So for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son, that whoever believes in him will not perish but have everlasting life. And that life is a life that we can live with transparency in the eyes of the world, to be a testimony that yes, we are part of God's kingdom in and also adopted in God's kingdom. But again, it goes back to the heart. And that's why today's podcast is entitled Liberia's Peril of Corrupt Hearts. When a heart is not right with God, then every other step that we take will be something that is missing. That is God's absolute truth. Now, we know that those at Ascension, okay, the three officials, Serena Cephas of the Justice Ministry, the National Port Authorities, Managing Director Tweway, as well as the Presidential Affairs Minister, Natana Magay, they are all Christians and they profess to be Christians. They have churches, they are members of churches, and they have contributed to those churches as well. They fall short, and let's assume they fall short for the glory of God. We are not here to beat them down because Galatians chapter 6, verse 1 says that we should bear each other's burden or one another's burden. And if a brother sins, we should be able, or the elders of the church should restore him. But all that we are saying here is that we are looking for the endemic. What is so endemic in our country is the corruption, which of course disrupts our economy and every social and moral fabric of our country. Of course, sin is sin, and we all fall short. But it is time that we have to wake up and understand where our mindset is. Is our mindset on the flesh? Because when our mindset on the flesh, according to Romans chapter 5 or chapter 8, then it ends to what? To death. But if the mind that is set on the things of the spirit, what gives us peace, okay, gives us peace. And so our country is in search right now for the right leaders that will lead, not that it will be perfect, but to serve with integrity and truth. And that's what the Liberian people need. Reverend Lord, you have visited our country. You have seen the poor people. You have helped in every way through your church, and your benevolent heart is something that we can recount here, and others in Liberia can also recount based on your effort. I know you feed the souls every day at your church, and looking at our country, looking at the church or the environment from the LCC, the Liberia Council of Churches, they released a statement commending President Weah for suspending the officials and also call on him to replace them immediately as well. What is your take so far? Do you think that the entire church environment, all the clergymen, all the churches, they should come together right now to see what kind of a solutions they can come with or come up with to work in line with the government or the entire government to come up with something to see how transparency and accountability can be carried out?
What there are three things we must allude to real quickly. One, the move that the United States took exposed the state of corruption within our country, and I, I do not want to limit my perspective to three individuals because it's
Mhm.
just a light that has been shown on the state of corruption in Liberia. So it's is bigger than these three people.
Yeah.
So there is a serious problem of corruption in Liberia that we need to take a look at. The second thing here is, if this is not just limited to these three individuals, then is the precedent action of sufficient magnitude? Is his response equitable to the magnitude of this crisis? His response was directed toward just the three individuals that were named. But I think his
Mhm.
response should go further, and it should be equitable. It should be equal to the magnitude of the problem. He should be addressing the problem of corruption, not just these individuals. The third thing I like to point out is that like Dr. Bond, Ambassador Bond indicated, that the solution to this problem is not limited to, does not rest simply with the government.
Mhm.
Solving this problem is bigger than the government ability to address it. We surely need, we definitely need a president who has the integrity, the ability, and that is assertive enough to contain corruption. If we look at the top 10 countries in Africa uh, who have been able to reduce corruption, the least corrupt countries,
Mhm.
the least corrupt country scored 70 out of 100, which basically means they have not totally eradicated corruption. And the average of the best is 53%, scoring 53%. I believe Ghana is at 48% of 100, which is considered a good score. Can you imagine? 40 is a good score when it comes to corruption. And so if Ghana is down somewhere at the bottom, maybe about 8 or so, um,
Mhm.
with about 48 or so, imagine what the other people at the bottom of the list will have. And we have over 50 countries in Africa, and you have 10 of them. The top 10, the lowest is at 40 something. So the other 50, you can imagine where they are. They're probably at 3, 4, 5. Can you really imagine that? Which means they have not even made the effort. So in these two areas that I just pointed out, in the area where one, corruption is a serious problem in Liberia, challenge us. It challenges us as the church because stealing is one of God's 10 commandments. And the church should not sit and observe stealing taking place in a country that identifies as a Christian nation. Moreover, the church should not sit and observe and do nothing and say nothing when stealing, which is a commandment of God, is being it's being committed in a country where our leaders consider themselves to be Christian. That gave us a greater responsibility that these people, us pastors, are pastoring people who are stealing from God's people.
Hmm.
So corruption is is bigger than the government ability to address. Secondly, the president addressed to the way he responded to this situation, I think should go above and beyond and either set up a task force or come up with a strategy uh, targeting the eradication or reduction of corruption in his government.
Mhm.
It should have gone beyond that. I think he should have come up with an investigation or put out some approach that addresses corruption holistically
Mhm.
in his government. I think that is what I expect of his office. And finally, because the government itself is not, we shouldn't limit the government in this process. And the church also can be assisted by other civic groups, such as schools. I think we need to bring it within our curriculum. If this is such a serious problem that have affected generations, um, several generations, if we want to make sure that the next generation was not going to be, then the mind of our children need to be indoctrinated that if you go, if you desire government to serve your government, corruption should be one thing that should not be considered in your leadership. So I think that's how this problem should have been addressed, and I don't think the president have done enough.
Okay, we're almost out of time here, but just lastly, before Reverend Dede comes in, um, if we have a justice system that is not functional to expectation when it comes to avenging or dispensing justice, and many people are suspicious of the justice system
Mhm.
that because it is not effective according to opinion of a lot of Liberians, and so they don't trust the justice system, they don't trust government officials, and so there's no deterrence for even those who engage in corrupt activity. Don't you think some sort of a revamping or rehabilitation should take place when it comes to our justice system as a whole? And the American ambassador also said that a lot of money have been pumped in the justice system to train judges how not to be corrupt, but still the problem persists.
Um, let me first begin with saying that the corruption in our country also stems from the the economic condition of the country, which also is an indication of poor performance by our government. One of the responsibilities of the government is to ensure the development of people, but moreover, that the government has the capacity to generate the kind of economy that stir of progress and sustainability. Is not happening within our country. The GDP of our country is not quite impressive. We do have the potential, but we are not meeting up to our potential. Unemployment is a serious problem. Education literacy is a serious problem in our country, and when you have these kind of situations where the poverty rate is high, you obviously will have critical social vices being developed in your country. Sociology of third world would tell you that when it will lead to a place where people become very violent, riots and crime will increase. Look everywhere in any society where poverty is of its height, crime and violence is up there. And and therefore, because people are suffering, poverty is of its at its epic in Liberia, no one can be trusted. And if the government is not paying people, and I'm coming back to the justice system situation that you're saying, and I'm saying this to let you know that because of the failure of our government, you are creating a load and a responsibility that your justice system is not able to maintain or control. Because as you develop and equip these people, the failure of your government to have a sustainable society will will create poverty that steer people in the direction of crime and violence and dishonesty to a height that the police will not be able to control. And I'll make a quick example. I know we're running out of time, but Reverend Dede and Dr. Red, you know that you can't send 10 cents to anyone in Liberia to buy you candy, and they will not spend 5 cents of that money and buy your candy and spend 5 cents on themselves. Why? Because there's an old edict in Liberia that say where you tie a goat, there will the goat eat. Now, if a man is hungry and you are not paying him enough, you are setting him up for failure. And so most of the corruption that is taking place in our system today with police officers on the street who are not being paid for 2-3 months. What kind of training and equipping into with dignity and that you want to instill in that man when the man has to go home to 10 children who are hungry and school fees have not been paid and he's standing in the hot sun all day? By the matter of fact, the man chooses when he go to work and he chooses when he leaves.
Mhm.
He comes early to make enough money and he leaves when he has collected enough money on the street. This is not a justice system that you can rely on, and the judges are not paid. So what? How do you expect them to instill justice within the country? You're setting these people up for failure. So I think the first thing that needs to be done, Mr. Red, and I think time has gone on, is us Liberian people, to come to the place where we can take the responsibility to choose leaders, to select leaders who are qualified. And Ambassador Bond alluded to the fact that we are electing popular leaders, and we are not concerned about their capacity and ability and their skills. But I think it should come to the place we should come to a place where action groups and opinion leaders should help set for for leaders in our coming elections, so we know what our country needs at this time. We definitely need people who can reach out to the international community, can sit with kings and queens, and influence the minds and heart for the development of our country. So I hope I help answer that question in terms of the security matter in our country.
Mhm.
We are running out of time right now. So the question that I have will take a while to be answered. So
Okay.
I would just skip that for now. Yeah, I would just skip that for now and say we we for us in the religious community, we our role is very, very important when it comes to uh, telling our people what they need to hear, not what they want to hear. And this goes to our leaders who Ellis referenced that, and you did the same. And to some extent, Ambassador Bounds talked about that. The church has a role to play. The leaders who have to, when I say leaders, I mean the church leaders, the pastors who have these
Hmm.
government officials attending their churches to speak from the scripture. I mean, boldly, and say what is red is red, what is black is black. Because if the scripture has been watered down, because these government officials come to church, they have to pay give contribution to the church, and we want these contributions, and don't say what the word of God says about what they do that is not right, then we're not helping them. So we ourselves who are in the church, the pastors, and the purpose, we have a role to play. And I'm asking myself, are we really playing our role, Alex and Reverend Lord? Are we really playing our role? That's where I want to stop today on this program.
All right. Any final word, Reverend Lord?
Well, I think I will end with because we're here as ministers and in my capacity as a pastor and a Liberian clergy. Um, I will conclude with in that same note that we as pastors in our Liberian churches should um, take advantage of our pulpits, take advantage of the opportunity to say a word every Sunday and sometimes throughout the week um, to indoctrinate, instill in the mind of our people the need um, to have a country uh, with leaders who have the integrity and the dignity to see their country advance, and moreover, who have love for humanity. Because stealing, corruption is nothing but stealing, and those who are corrupting our countries in Africa, in Liberia, they are thieves and should be called by that name. They are thieves, and they should be treated um, as such.
All right. Thank you so much. And I saw this picture on your webpage, your dad and you. There was a appreciation award right here. When was this
Yes.
event?
Oh, that I was receiving an award actually from my church, and he was invited to present that award to me.
Oh, great, great, great picture, great picture. I didn't know how you were tall like that. Okay, and this is Reverend Lorenzo Oliver Lorenzo, Lord Senior, and he is a pastor at All Saints War Mission Church in Silver Springs, Maryland. And we are so glad to have you here, Reverend Lord,
Thank you.
to be our special guest. And thank you for your perspective that you gave us today. And I believe we all benefited from what you had to say. And again, we might be calling on you to talk more about things that will
Anytime.
inspire our fellow Liberians, so that we all can participate in this growing process, so that our country can once again be that country or city on that hill that Jesus talks about.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
And you are invited. Let me know when you are in Silver Spring. You need to come and stop by. Reverend Deda just spoke to my church just about a month ago. And thank you so much. He had brought us powerful word for us.
Yes, yes, I watched that video. I did. I did. Thank you and have
Uh,
a great day.
God bless
All
you.
right, to all our viewers, this is how we end our podcast here for today, Saturday, August the 20th, 2022. Liberia's peril of corrupt hearts. And we'll be back here next week when Reverend Alexander Collins of the Redeemed Life Church in Minnesota will be here as our special guest, along with Mr. Jacob uh, Quate, an inspiring young man who is also bidding in the future for Liberia's highest office. He will be here to give his perspective on the growth of our country. Hopefully, we'll have them here next week, Saturday. And please share this video with your friends, okay, so that they can be a part of this program as well. And on behalf of Reverend Dede, I would like to say thank you for listening, and may God bless you this weekend as you celebrate whatever occasion or whatever you do. Let us all do it in the name of Christ and to his glory. Thank you.